Thank you for tuning in to the ClearTalk podcast, a podcast brought to you by Solutions 360. We'll be jumping in right where we left off on our previous episode for part 2, cracking the supply chain code with Avidex's VP of Procurement, Michael Stammire. We hope you enjoy this conversation as much as we did.
So as you think about, and then on the idea of data analysis, and we have worked with a lot of our customers on that, is use your own data to make your decision, not what the manufacturer is telling you, because we've all experienced this. I wouldn't call it, but I don't know what to call it, but they're not very accurate. And sometimes our own experience is more accurate than what they put out there for future or hoped for or whatever they're planning on. So that's a great idea. So, but we continue to have unpredictable lead times, right? And what do you do to help circumvent that level of unpredictability? Even with your best data mining, you think it's 6 months, and it might be 2 months, in which case you're sitting on gear and out of cash for pocket for it, or it might be 9 months, in which case you're having to do the dance with the customer to move projects out. What tools or tricks do you have on managing that unpredictability?
You know, it really is unpredictable, even still today. And the one thing we've looked at it with our inventory is we try to keep a certain level of inventory, right? Everybody wants to not burden the cost of inventory, and you're comparing that versus your credit cycle against your receivables. Yep. And you really have to be smooth operating. You have to keep lean inventory and not hold the cost of all of that. We do look at ratios of our allocated inventory versus available inventory, and what's a comfort level for us. Obviously, if revenue's up and sales are up, your total inventory is going to increase. Yeah. And in some cases, that's completely fine if you're growing. But having too much available and unallocated, what we do have to look at with the unforeseen, hey, this was supposed to be here in 3 months and now it's 6 months, and actually we just heard it's 9 months, is working with our customers, right? And that's where good account executives and good relationships come into play to say, hey, we've been holding this for you. Can you take it, right? We can't hold it in our warehouse. We've purchased this 4-year project. These are unforeseen issues. A lot of times there's redesign. Right? What products are available, and can we sell a scope versus selling products and a bill of material? Right? We're going to give you the same system scope-wise and same deliverable. It just might not be the same piece of glass or the same component in the closet. So that's become very important as well. But one thing we've done as well is look at versus all of our back orders and all of these components that keep pushing out. We do a back order report versus what's available, what's been returned from projects, what customers have redesigned. A lot of them can't. They're willing to wait. A lot of these customers.
Right. Yeah. That's actually been surprising, the amount of time that corporate standards by our customers have trumped kind of getting projects done.
Yeah, they're willing to sit there and wait, and some of them that are willing to wait, unfortunately, aren't willing to take the bulk of the gear that we have sitting.
Right.
So we'll do exercises to essentially, rob Peter to pay Paul, where we'll go through our available inventory. We won't touch the allocated unless project managers, account executives are willing to part and wait for what's inbound. But we do look at all of our existing back orders. I'm not canceling any POs today, right? If a project gets canceled or redesigned and I placed a PO specifically allocated for that project, we were going to keep it on order. And if we're going to cancel any PO, it's going to be the last one placed in the back of line. Right. So we're constantly doing this shuffle to, help each other. So if we have all of a sudden a highly desirable product come in and it becomes available, we're running reports almost weekly to say, well, this is available, but what's already ordered and on back order, and go top of that list and see how we can improve a project manager's forecast and get key components in the field to help customers and projects. And that's a constant shuffle that's still ongoing, which helps us get ahead of lead times. If we had a project land tomorrow, I might have placed it 4 months ago, and that project has we keep shuffling things forward because that project had one become available from another project. So it's a lot of work, a lot of things you can have to do pre-pandemic, but it helps move things forward.
Sounds to me, and what I'm hearing is an unintended benefit of the pandemic is the level of communication across the different organizational pieces that tend to become siloed, right? We've all familiar with the sales pointing at engineering pointing at project management pointing at, the commissioning engineers, whoever, right, on getting things done. And what I'm hearing from you is that your company has become much more nimble and able to build communication channels that allow you to do these things that in the past would have created a fairly inefficient system to work through. In fact, most of us have tried our careers to get rid of those inefficiencies, and you've discovered a different path, which is communication, coordination, and nimbleness is what I'm hearing, if I'm picking up on that correctly.
You are, and I mean, we like to think we're doing it efficiently, right? It's easy to go first in, first out.
Right.
That's easy, doesn't disrupt the system, doesn't cause headaches, but it's not always what's best for the business.
You mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, I want to return to that, about the role with partners, right? You and I were part of the good old days where you had the QBRs, and the only question was, what's your volume incentive going to be? How much more are you going to take this year, right? And both sides would posture and squirm or whatever we needed to do, but that was really the only question. Like, how do we become more important to each other? So, but the pandemic has changed those rules. How has it impacted your partner relationship, not the individual items, like the missing DSP or control, but the overall relationship with your partners? How has that changed for you?
In a lot of cases, you've doubled down with your big partners, right? Whether that's a distribution partner or a material vendor, you've provided a lot more information, right? And you sit there and have way more detailed reviews versus just, what do we think we're going to do? Did we grow 10%? Did we hit our metric? It's more about, hey, how can we get you more? Because we need more support, right? We're going to bring you more share of the business in order for that priority. And the negotiation becomes less recently about what's our VIR, what's our GIR, what's our marketing money. Although that's all still very important, it became about, how are you going to help me get my gear? How are you going to give me accurate information, right? The worst thing the partners do is the bad information versus right. When you have to call them and say, my gear was supposed to be here last week, it's still not here. We want people that are communicating up front and saying, hey, you're expecting this next week. There's been an issue. It's pushed out. Give us advance notice so that we can be nimble and move. So a lot of the discussions turned to, what's our freight policy? What's our allocation policies? How are they going to help us with that? It also opened the doors for a lot of new vendors, right? So where you had these big back end programs pooled with a few vendors, in order to get that same achievable bottom line in return, it's a bunch of small ones, right? And there's a lot of growth within these new manufacturers, new vendors, and they aren't new, but maybe they're new to being a big part of our business. And so it's completely changed, and a lot more information sharing.
That's interesting. Yeah. So become much more mutually dependent on each other, share the information, rather than try to hold the cards close to your chest as a way to improve your supply chain cycle.
Yeah. And I will add to manufacturers that sell through distribution channel became way more integral to that process of sending them our back order reports, right? Here's my back orders placed at all these different distributors you use. You tell me who's getting allocation first. You tell me where it is, right? Because I need it tomorrow. Right. And trying to work the system on both sides was crucial for large projects.
Sounds like you're you don't have many gray hairs, but it sounds like you might have inherited a few through this process, Michael.
Yeah, there's some whites coming through. I have to get rid of them.
So is there any light at the end of the tunnel? What have you noticed in the supply chain now that we're 2 years into this? What's coming next for you?
I think everyone's probably seen this. Their lead times are getting better. The information's getting better. Rather than the lack of communication and things pushing out, It's becoming a little more reliable. I think the next step, what I'd like to see is, I don't think things are ever going to be on the shelf, but if they say, hey, it's going to ship end of August, it is end of August and it's a reliable date. Everyone was trying to get its information so far up in production, and there's one glitch in a component and supply of production. It's just a huge snowball effect. So it is getting better. I think we're going to see a new normal this next calendar year where things will stabilize. And it's also getting better because you see some of these new parts, right? First, there was new parts due to, well, we have some component changes and there's a couple features missing, or we have two parts running at the same time that can do the same thing depending on which components we get. But now there's actually new parts in development, right? New technology and things that are starting to emerge, which tells us people are able to clear through their back orders and backlog as well as start investing in the R&D and the new product launches and things like that, which is exciting.
That's exciting news to hear on behalf of the entire industry. So yes, thank you for that. So let's conclude with what are the lessons you've learned that you use to manage supply chain today that might have been different than the principles you came into the job with, a couple of years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago?
That old sales saying of under promise and over deliver, right. I think can never go away, right? It's communication to the customer is so key, and they know what's going on. And if they don't, they've been living under a rock. So it's working with them on, things may take longer, but we need to communicate. I think communication is key right now. Still with the issues going on in supply chain, getting ahead of things, and that communication goes to our partners, our vendors and manufacturers as well, right? If they're not expecting a large order to hit next month for an important end user, then we're all in trouble because they're going to have to rob Peter to pay Paul, and the rest of the industry and the channel is going to hurt from it. So as much information as possible to our manufacturers, to our customers, and being transparent, right? It's a two-way street, no matter which relationship it is.
That's an excellent way to end, because I think that's been the theme of our entire conversation today, and an unexpected gold nugget for me in the fact that when we talk about supply chain, procurement, the role of strategic partnership, it turns out that a lot of this is just creating good communication habits with your sales team that give you pipelines that you can actually believe in, that you can order against, good communications with your customers through the entire process of helping them understand why you might be asking for deposits and seeking their aid or changing the design and the scope, to good communications internally, allowing project managers not to hoard, but to free things up so that we can keep the projects moving, to good communications with your partners, to circling full stream back and good communications with the customers to keep them on track of what's going on. So thank you so much, Michael. This has been a great conversation, and the nugget of improving communications as a way to improve your supply chain really jumped out at me through this conversation.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. It was a great discussion, and always enjoy catching up.
Same here.